Today, we've got a bit of an oddball. This is a Casablanca 4 Seasons in antique white with 1-inch arm blade brackets and Ventura faceplates. Now, from a distance this fan may not seem too peculiar, but now let me show you the tag. As you can see, the tag does say 4 Seasons. The serial number indicates this fan is from May of 1985, and the model number is CB04666. So first of all, 1985, as far as I'm aware, was several years before the Ventura model was introduced. Yet it has that same type of faceplate. Additionally, as far as I'm aware, the Ventura was never offered in antique white, especially not the older style of antique white from the 80s. Thirdly, as you can see right here, this is a Slumber Quiet potentiometer, as this fan does utilize the Slumber Quiet control system. And Slumber Quiet was all but history by 1985. Granted, I'm sure this one can be explained under a very late parts build, as I'm sure Casablanca in 1985 still had Slumber Quiet units left over, not only for probably the millions of calls they were getting about Slumber Quiet repairs needing to be had, but also just, you know, they were usually pretty notorious for using leftover parts a few years after, so they probably had some left over and ended up putting it in these fans. However, in terms of mainstream, by 1985, Slumber Quiet had been all but replaced by Slumber 5. And one last little thing here, again, that model number is similar to that of a Turbo Zephyr. For those who don't know, a Turbo Zephyr, that fan's model number is 01. And then the 3 numbers for whatever finish it is. So if it's an antique brass Turbo Zephyr, for instance, the model number would be CB01444. Basically, in front of the regular model number for that model, there's an extra 0. And something else about the Turbo Zephyr is it's the same faceplate style as a Zephyr, except the vents are tilted to the side, which is the same case here, as the Ventura faceplate is very similar to that of a 4 Seasons, but again, the vents are somewhat tilted off to the side. So I suppose if you really wanted to, you could say this is a Turbo 4 Seasons. Fan is not in the greatest shape. It's a little dirty and has quite a few nicks and dings in the paint job. Thankfully, though, it still runs very well, as the blades are well balanced and the bearings are good. This ceiling fan came to me from Brandon C. Johnson, who said that Mark Wilson previously had it. And the Slumber Quiet was all but removed from it when I had it, but I knew it was Slumber Quiet because it had a heat sink in the motor, so I took some spare Slumber Quiet parts I had, put it in here, and it worked again, so yay for that. And while I'm not entirely sure of the full extent of the services Mark Wilson performed on this fan, one thing that very well he may have done is changed out the motor. The reason I say that is because this fan has an Emerson K55 motor in it, and it's from 1985. And for those who recall my grievances from many videos before this, every single non-IntelliTouch Casablanca fan I've ever encountered from the years 1984 and 1985 has an Asterson motor. And yet this one doesn't. This is the first one I've ever seen that does not, which leads me to believe that the motor was switched out at one point. Either that, or maybe it's just a very, very, very rare one-off fluke. Perhaps they were just like, oh crap, we're out of Asterson motors, what do we do? Ah, forget it, just use an Emerson. I don't know. But my money goes towards motor replacement, personally. Anyways, now we'll turn the fan on. Starting as slow as it can go on the SQ. And for as weird as this fan is, it is not the only one of its type to surface. I do know of at least one other one out there that is like this. So it's not like this is just some Friday fan thing. They did actually make these as a consistent model, even though it never showed up anywhere in any sort of catalogs, as far as I'm aware at least. And I believe this model, quote-unquote model, was only ever offered in antique white. Which is an interesting contrast to the Turbo Zephyr, which as far as I'm aware was only ever offered in antique brass and polished brass. So the Slumber Quiet is working great. Got that nice aesthetic slow speed at the far end. Unfortunately, this fan also came without a hang-true hatch and without a switch cap. Thankfully, though, I had a plethora of antique white Casablanca fans that I was able to just borrow a switch cap from. And hang-true is not necessary for my testing rig, because I just use the basic ball socket for everything here. Because some collectors probably do swap out the mounting to use the proper type every time they switch it, but that would just be way too much work for me. Not to mention it would probably completely wear out the drilled holes into the wood. Medium speed is always when the camera decides to give up on trying to focus. and full tilt. And as you can see, unlike my Turbo Zephyr, this thing actually spins pretty freaking fast. So even though it is not this thing's official model name, it is just my nickname for it, this fan would actually somewhat live up to the term Turbo 4 Seasons, or to the model name Turbo 4 Seasons. This thing is fast and powerful as a Casablanca should be. Well, that's just about all there is to show. This has been an oddball, an antique white Casablanca 4 Seasons with Ventura faceplates.